Welcome back, it's me Lou, and I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review. Today we are doing a double feature. We are taking a look at a pair of figures from the G.I. Joe Classified series, and they are this. We have G.I. Joe Classified Series Flint and G.I. Joe Classified Series Zartan. So, when the G.I. Joe Classified series debuted last year, I was ecstatic. I love G.I. Joes, and to be able to get them in a 6-inch scale, for me, was just amazing. It seemed kind of weird the past year. I've said this before in previous videos, but it seemed like during this entire global pandemic, or quarantine, or whatever you want to call it, it felt like these figures were kind of rushed out. It seemed like, I think they might have came out when last March, and then we got the one wave, and then we got exclusives, and then I think immediately afterwards, maybe like a month and a half later, there were those Target exclusives, and it just felt like we got a lot of figures really fast, and then for the last 6 months we haven't gotten too many, and with the Snake Eyes movies coming out, they kind of like revealed the 6-inch Snake Eyes figures. So for me, this feels kind of like, I don't know, offsetting in a weird way. It felt like we got a lot of figures really fast, a lot of the core characters, but then it kind of comes to a halt for a little bit, and then they announced the new movie figures coming out, and I'm not sure when or if we're coming back to the more traditional designs at any point. Either way, I'm stoked. I'm looking forward to the Snake Eyes movie. I'm looking forward to those figures. The recent figures we have gotten are really awesome. So we're going to take a look at two of those. And like I said, Flint and Zartan. First off, a look at the packaging. I like the packaging a lot. I like the character artwork that's featured on each box. It makes each box unique. My only gripe is I kind of wish the box art would be a little bit more consistent. That's something I really enjoyed about the Star Wars Black series. Not the recent packaging, but more so the previous ones where the boxes were predominantly black and red, and they had the kind of like almost like etching or black and white illustration on the lower right corner. I believe the artist was Gregory Titus, and I just love the fact that they used the same artist seemingly for all the character art, so it looked really consistent across the board. Where some of these, not to take anything away from the artists, but it just kind of throws me off when the art styles kind of like are very different. Like this one, the Flint one looks a little bit more realistic, whereas this one looks a little bit more comic book inspired. And then you might even get the occasional artwork where it just looks super cartoony. So, I mean, everything they've given us in terms of the artwork is beautiful. I just kind of wish it was a little bit more consistent. Or that even if you put the figures together, maybe you could make a giant, like, mural or something. So on both this packaging, we have the character artwork. We have Zartan, we have Flint. On the spines, more character artwork. On the back, we have the giant, awesome illustration. I wish, I don't know, maybe there is a poster out there, but I'd love to have this as a large poster. It's such a throwback for me to see something like this. It reminds me so much of like the old 80s, like Transformers package designs. Like, you flip over the back, and besides getting like the little Transformers body, you'd have that huge battle scene. That really reminds me of this. This is so cool. This was also really cool because it kind of gave us a sneak peek at some of the figures that were coming down the line. And maybe, I don't know, I'm kind of hopeful that maybe we'll get some 6-inch scaled vehicles. But as we've seen with the Star Wars Black series, they've done a couple of vehicles, and they're awesome, but they don't always sell. So I'm kind of wondering if that's kind of a, if that's too expensive on Hasbro's part to invest in something so large and so expensive, and if there's a market for that. If anything, you never know. They might do maybe like a HasLab and a crowdfunded kind of deal. And over here we kind of have those, I don't know, you have to decipher these on the G.I. Joe website. It's almost kind of like their perks or stats. But I kind of wish they would just give us the classic file cards like we got back in the day. Like if you collected G.I. Joes in the 80s, there are 3 3/4 figures on the back. There would be a file card and it lists the characters' code name, their real name, some interesting background information like maybe where they went to school or where they were trained, and their specialty. So let's get these both open and check them out. Alright, so these figures have been around for a while now, so I'm not going to do a too detailed of a review. I'm sure you can find, it's like I said, I don't do the best reviews, so I don't want to like necessarily just cover what other people have already done. So I'm sure you can like Google or YouTube other reviewers and see what they have to say about the figures. Right off the bat, first impressions while they're still in their plastic trays. Love the designs a lot. I'm really glad that they didn't deviate too far from the core designs. I mean, it's a little bit more modernized, but it's nice to see that they still retain some of their original elements. Like, I love the fact that Zartan still includes the backpack with his disguise face. I kind of wish they would release this more as a deluxe figure and give us that like kind of like swamp vehicle he had with the 80s release. So back in the 80s, if you're not familiar, the original 3 3/4 Zartan, it didn't only come with a figure and this backpack of disguises. He even came with this, it's almost kind of like a swamp, kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a weird wave runner kind of deal. And it was green, and he even had like this weird neon green cargo bin that you could like disassemble the vehicle and keep it inside. It's really awesome. Flint looks great here. It always throws me off when I see Flint without the beret. But it's cool that, you know, they give you the option of being able to remove it as opposed to just molding onto his head. His shotgun looks awesome too. And I love how he has all the rounds on his vest. Alright, let's take a look at the figures. Alright, so as I mentioned before, you know, I'm more interested about the figures than I am with accessories. If you want a better and more detailed review, just, you know, Google it or look it up on YouTube. And partially, it's truth be told, it's early Saturday evening, and I'm super tired. I had a very long day, and I just kind of woke up from a nap, and I'm like grouchy and hungry. So I just want to finish this and just get to eating. All right. Oh man. All right. First impressions out of the package, and in my hand, with Zartan. Wow, this is a beautiful figure. Zartan was one of those characters I was really, as soon as the line hit and when they debuted some of the early figures, I kept my fingers crossed. I'm like, I really want a Zartan right out of the gate. And I don't think they debuted this yet. You know, with the first core set of figures, there wasn't really necessarily a Zartan mentioned. So after I received the first wave, I actually made my own custom Zartan, and I'll save that for another review. He's one of those figures as a kid. I loved the character. I loved the action figure. There's some things about the original release of Zartan that I think is, especially with the 3 3/4 one, that I think is always going to be superior to any other figure they make down the road. Like, as beautiful as the sculpting and detail on this is, just in terms of the play feature, the original figure had so much going for it. For one, you know, Zartan's the master of the skies, and the original figure had like a weird camouflage feature about it. If you put it in a certain light, it would change colors, and same with his armor. Like, his original armor plate on his chest had this had like a clear window, and then there was a sticker underneath it, and if you exposed it to sunlight, it would change colors, and then Zartan's skin would also change colors. It was really cool. And that went for his thigh armor also. I believe those changed colors as well, if I remember correctly. I had the original figure, and I was combing around, and I couldn't find it. I was really disappointed. So somewhere in my house, it's out there, or I hope I didn't lose it, because if I did, I might have to hunt one down. I like that you can remove his hood. The original 3 3/4 hood wasn't removable; it was glued in. And to make things worse, he had like this notch carved into the middle of his head, and there was a peg in the hood. And as a kid, I really wanted to see what he looked like without the hood. And I remember I pried it off, and there was all that glue residue, and I saw that disgusting notch in the middle of his head. But for this, it's awesome. They give you the option of being able to remove this. And then he has his bandana that goes around his neck. I love that his body armor, especially on the shoulders, it's one piece with this, and then it's this very soft rubbery plastic, so you can like actually move it around, and you know it kind of flexes and moves with it, so it's not too hindering. I'm kind of wondering if this vest comes off. I don't see any tabs or anywhere it splits down the middle. So if you were to take this off, all right, I might look stupid because I can't find if this thing detaches anywhere. You'd probably have to boil the arms so that it softens the bicep, and then you can pop them out from the shoulders, and then from there you'd be able to remove the vest. So I'm curious to see what the body underneath looks like, because it seems like this would be a great base figure for customs. You know, if you remove the body armor and then you have the kind of like the bare muscular sculpt underneath, you know, you can easily repaint that or leave it bare and make some sort of cool custom figure. His belt buckle is really awesome. It's kind of like this, like a horned skull. That looks awesome, and it's very punk rock too because he has the double eyelets on his belt and then here's the sheath for his knife. Very cool detail. They almost kind of give you the impression that maybe it's like alligator skinned with a texture. Yeah, this is a great figure. Alright, moving along, we're going to take a look at Flint. Flint, wow, this is awesome also. Alright, I've mentioned this before. I love it when they give you holsters and places on the figure where you can store the weapons. I hate, like, for me, it makes me crazy that I have so many Star Wars Black Series figures, and, you know, like, stormtroopers come with all their pistols and rifles and whatnot. And same with all these other characters, but you have nowhere to store them. But it's awesome with these figures because, you know, it seems a little bit more realistic, and it's a nice added touch when they give you a holster. And you can put the pistol in there, and in the case here, they gave you this storage for his shotgun in the back. I can't stand figures like Marvel Legends sometimes where you might buy a figure like Nick Fury or like a Deadpool, and they'll give you all these belts and holsters, but sometimes there'll already be a gun in place, but it's molded into the holster. So it's more of a, then it becomes more of a decorative issue, and it's not really, you know, serves a purpose. Yeah, so the details on these figures, the sculpting is very crisp. Nice color choices also, with Zartan being the master of the skies, and with him being a much more shadier character and him hanging out in the bayou and stuff. It's cool that he has kind of these earthy, muted colors. He has some grays, he has some browns, he has some blacks. You know, really dirty red, dark red for the bandana, and more of that kind of like Allergan, like reptile texture on his hood. Really cool attention to detail. And on Flint here, again, nice color choices. They've kind of pulled back on the wackier gold. I know some collectors hated it. Like with the first release, like Roadblock and Duke, they'd have that weird gold and silver armor. And it seems like they listened to the fans. You know, they kind of pulled back from that. And for his shin guards and his knee pads, there's more of a consistency here. Everything's kind of pulled together. Those colors kind of match the colors on his chest, on the body armor. Again, I'm kind of curious if this vest piece comes off, but it doesn't look like it does. It seems like you'd have to customize the figure, which is a shame because I really want to see what the base body looks like underneath this. I so desperately want like maybe 2 or 3 more of these Flint bodies, because for me the opportunity for making costumes, it's really high. I'd love to make a Stalker. That's one figure I really want. I want a Stalker. I made a custom Falcon, but I think if I had this figure at the time, I would have used this as a base body for Falcon. It might not be true to the original character design, but I just, as for now, it'd be a nice placeholder for me. I love the camouflage detail on his pants. There's a nice micro texture on his cargo pants. Yeah, these look great. The belt has some nice detail. I think these might be some sort of like frag grenades. It's so awesome. He has his sleeves rolled up and everything. He kind of has that like almost like an arrogant kind of smirk on his face. He's seen some battles. He has a small scar over one eye. Beautiful figures. And I brought some other figures to compare them to. All right, so I don't know so I didn't with my 3 3/4 figures. I'm horrible. I don't really care much about. I mean, I collect them, but I'll just throw them all in the box. I mean, unless I collect my figures like I did kind of like when I was a little kid. to be honest, when I was a kid, I'd keep all my action figures like in a shoebox or a bag, and then all their accessories I'd mix together in like maybe a sandwich baggie or some sort of tiny container. So I'd always lose track. I didn't know whose gun went with which character, so it became a fun game for me. It's like I wouldn't try to match them. I just try to find which weapon fit the character's personality. Like if for example, Roadblock. I mean, his gun's easy to find. It's a big ass machine gun, but if I couldn't find it, I'd just give him some other big ass machine gun. I want to see. I think this might have actually came with this figure, maybe. In other fictions, Zartan's really skilled with a bow and arrow, and I think that's why I gave him this. Here's a Flint figure. I believe this was from a comic 2-pack. Again, I don't know if these are the correct weapons, but these are the weapons I chose to give him. And then we have another Flint action figure. This is based off of the character from G.I. Joe Retaliation, the movie with The Rock. And I have 2 more Zartan figs. These were from, it was either the late 90s or early 2000s. Hasbro was, they wanted to like restart G.I. Joe again, and they gave us new 3 3/4 figures. They're missing the hoods. I have the hoods in a box somewhere, but I just grabbed the figures. This was, I believe, the original release, and this was the one of the repaints down the road. So in terms of comparison, I never had the original 3 3/4 Flint action figure, so I was happy when I got this. As I mentioned earlier, I believe this came in a comic book 2-pack, and that was many years ago. I want to say maybe somewhere around. I'm trying to find if there's a year on here. What does that say? There's a year listed here, but I can't make it out. It says maybe 83. So this isn't the original mold. It was a re-release. And when they re-released these as a comic 2-pack, I believe these figures were already out for some time. It was weird because there was a good period of time where Hasbro was releasing 3 3/4 figures, but they had mixed. They wouldn't be the same. How do I word this? The body types and the design, the engineering styles were very different across. Maybe like they probably would. I'm trying to put this into words. They might have had 2 lines running at once. Like you would have had the mainstream line, like which this might have fell into, and then you might have had like the comic book 2-packs, and for those would have like reissued, repainted versions of the OG figs from back in the day. So it was just interesting that you could buy two different kinds of 3 3/4 GI Joe figures at the same time, but they kind of wouldn't mesh together that well just because their engineering and design styles were very different. You have, on one hand, you have a figure that was designed in the 80s, but the only thing different is they might have gave you a new head sculpt like this and just repainted it. And at the same time, you'd get a totally new engineered figure, and the way these figures were engineered and designed were completely different. But I mean, you could kind of like fudge them together because they're roughly the same size, kinda. The original ones are a little bit shorter than the newer figs they made during the early 2000s. So as I mentioned with this Flint, never had the original. When the comic book 2-pack came out, I was all stoked when I got that, and it's nice because they gave you a classic figure with some new things about it. Much better paint application. They just, the technology in the 2000s was a lot better than the 80s in terms of paint. I believe they also gave us new head sculpts, I think. So I think this might have been a new head sculpt altogether, much more realistically proportioned with the body. And then we come across these figures. This figure's maybe like 10 years old by now. The G.I. Joe figures, when they did in the, maybe these came out like in 2010 or, around there, give or take. And the engineering on the figures were beautiful back then. Super hyper detailed. Hasbro had 3 3/4 Star Wars figures. I mean, they've always had 3 3/4 Star Wars figures, but for me, these kind of came out around that prime of the 3 3/4 Star Wars figures. You had like the Legacy collection and things that were super articulated, and they were releasing these G.I. Joe figures that were inspired by the movie lines, and some that were just all new lines altogether, like the Pursuit of Cobra, and the molds and the details were just amazing. The figures are super articulated. They could do everything. They came with a buttload of accessories. Awesome. I always wish they would continue some sort of 3 3/4 G.I. Joe line like this as a constant, like they're always there, but they aren't. It seems like we always just get new G.I. Joe figures when there's either an anniversary or a movie. G.I. Joe unfortunately doesn't have the shelf consistency of like Transformers or Star Wars, where they appeal to kids all the time. I really think G.I. Joe's, it's people that buy it, it's more of a nostalgic thing. So that's why we don't see them as often as we should. And for the longest time, we didn't have these 6-inch figures. People wanted them for the longest time. Ever since they did the 6-inch Marvel Legends, and as soon as they started doing, dipping their toes into Star Wars Black Series, people wanted these, and it took forever. But it's nice that we got them. This Zartan's, with the exception of the head, it's kind of inspired by the original OG figure. The original figure from the 80s, you can actually remove the front of his chest piece, and then that's where there would be the sticker, and the armor would snap on, and the figure would change color in the sunlight. I believe this is a new head altogether. The color scheme is different than the original, but this is a good echo of the past. It's not the exact same figure, but if you had the original, it's a good fill-in piece. All right, so yeah, this was a brief look at the G.I. Joe Classified Zartan and Flint. As I've mentioned before, I apologize if you're expecting something a little bit more detailed, and if you've seen my other videos, I don't always dive deep into looking at the weapons. I'm always just more about the action figures, just because I know I'm not, these figures are I'm kind of late to the party with reviewing these. These have been out for a while now, and there's dozens of reviews on these. But for me, I like to just provide more so stories about my experience and history with the toys, and for me, it's just a nice way to relive some memories and share that with you. So, once again, thank you for dropping by. I hope that you found something informative to take away from this. If you're on the fence about these figures, don't be. I highly recommend you get them. If I had to rate these both numerically, easily 8.5 to a 9.5. I feel that strongly about these figures. The G.I. Joe Classified series line is a wonderful toy line. If if you grew up on the franchise in the '80s, it's a great callback, and you'll get nothing but the feels every time you see a new fig and you handle one. If you're younger and if you didn't grow up with these, you'll appreciate these because in the world of Star Wars Black Series and Marvel Legends, there's a lot to take away from them, and they're just awesome. They're hard to find right now on shelves during the pandemic, so anytime you see them, just grab them. Especially like at Targets, the whole Target deals with exclusives and stuff. It can be really annoying, and if you're like me, sometimes you might not have a choice but then to just like find them online for a decent price. All right, once again, my name is Lou. I hope you have a pleasant day, and I'll see you later. Take care.